Shiny Pokemon are so exciting because they're incredibly rare and difficult to find. But what if you don't care about that? What if you just want any shiny Pokemon in the easiest way possible? Well, today, I'm gonna tell you how to do just that in every mainline Pokemon game. Two quick exclusions to mention first though, limited time events and modding/hacking. The shinies must be obtained today, legally, by you. We start by skipping over red, blue, and yellow because shiny Pokemon did not exist yet. Just kidding, we're not skipping them because they did exist. You just can't see them unless you move them somewhere else. In Generation 2, whether or not a Pokemon was shiny was determined by their DVs, essentially the proto version of IVs. Therefore, if you obtain a Pokemon in Gen 1 with the right DVs, then trade it to a Gen 2 game, it will be shiny on arrival. The blanket odds are 1 in 8,192, odds they preserved for several generations even after DVs went away. But Gen 1 shinies are far, far harder to find because you have to catch the Pokemon to figure out its DVs. However, thanks to the jankiness of Gen 1, you can guarantee a shiny Pokemon in red, blue, and yellow. If a wild Pokemon uses Transform twice in the same battle, its DVs are permanently overwritten with the DVs of the second Pokemon it transformed into. If that was confusing, that's fair, I will explain, but the end result is a guaranteed shiny Ditto. If you already have your own shiny Ditto, then getting another one is straightforward. A wild Ditto transforms, then uses Transform from your Ditto's moveset. But you can do this without already having a shiny Ditto. In fact, you can use most any shiny Pokemon from the original 151. First, obtain a shiny Pokemon in a Gen 2 game. It can be any except these 6. But if it's Ditto, it already works, and if it's the others, just evolve them. Then trade that shiny to Gen 1 and teach it Mimic using the TM. All Pokemon but those 6 previously mentioned can learn it. Then find a wild Ditto you can outspeed and use Mimic to copy Transform. In Gen 1, Mimic didn't just reuse the same move that the opponent used last, it changed Mimic in your moveset to one of your opponent's moves for the rest of the battle. So the wild Ditto will transform, turning into a Pokemon with Transform in its moveset thanks to Mimic. Once it uses Transform again, its DVs become those of your shiny Pokemon. So once you catch it and trade it back to Gen 2, you will see that it is shiny. This is far easier than full odds, but still requires a Pokemon you know to be shiny. Thankfully, that's pretty easy to find. In Gold, Silver, and Crystal, the easiest shiny Pokemon is the red Gyarados. Guaranteed shiny every time you surf up to it in the Lake of Rage. It serves as the introduction to shiny Pokemon, and you must battle it to complete the story. Because of this, it's definitely the most famous shiny Pokemon of all time. Honorable mention goes to the odd egg in Crystal though, a gift egg from the daycare that hatches into one of 7 different baby Pokemon with a very high chance to be shiny. 50% in Japanese versions, 14% total across all Pokemon options for international versions. But while 14 and 50% are very high, they're not 100. Both Gens 1 and 2 had a way to guarantee a shiny Pokemon, but this disappeared violently in Gen 3. In Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, the easiest shiny Pokemon is a full odds one. What? Why did I make that noise? There is unfortunately no method to increase the odds above 1 in 8,000, and no guaranteed shiny Pokemon exist. Okay, technically there is one that has higher odds, but it's definitely not easier. The Coliseum bonus disc Jirachi ends up with slightly higher odds due to its predetermined trainer ID and secret ID. More on that in a bit, don't worry about it right now. Resulting in shiny odds around 1 in 7,282. Slightly better than full odds. But you get 1 Jirachi per save file. So for many years, the strategy was restarting your game and progressing to getting the Pokédex every single reset, meaning one check for a shiny Jirachi takes 10 minutes. I did find a more recent video by The Domination explaining a way to cut the encounter time down to about 2 minutes by intentionally corrupting your save file and loading a backup one, saving the time of starting the game from scratch. Most of those 2 minutes come from the animations of dispensing the Jirachi from the GameCube over and over again. But even with that increased time, this isn't easier. Sure, the odds are better than full odds, but not better enough to justify 2 minutes per reset. And even then, you still need a whole GameCube and the bonus disc to even do this. Fire Red and Leaf Green are mostly the same, but with a really weird exception. There are some guaranteed shinies in Trainer Tower, but they're trainer Pokemon, so do not count. I'm talking about Unknown in the Tanabe Ruins on 7 Island. Whether or not a Pokemon is shiny depends on 3 things: your trainer ID, your secret ID, which is essentially another trainer ID that you can't see, and the Pokemon's personality value, another hidden metric that is exclusive to every specific instance of a wild Pokemon. But the personality value also impacts which form an Unknown is, resulting in different letters having different odds, ranging from as good as 1 in 5,120 to as bad as 1 in 18,432. But I can't just say, oh yeah, the best shiny odds are Unknowns S, U, B, C, R, I, and E. I don't know, I just picked some random ones there. Because your trainer ID and your secret ID are different every playthrough, which means different letters have different odds in different save files. Now you could know these odds if you figured out your secret ID, but that's super difficult. Most methods involve techniques that are excluded from this video and or involve already having a shiny. And those that don't involve either get ridiculous. If you're okay starting a new save in Fire Red or Leaf Green. 1. Start a new save. 2. Start a stopwatch when you press A to accept your name on the Your Name screen. 3. Stop the stopwatch when your character shrinks and turns white, just before the character is in the moving truck. Huh? What? Hold on. Also, I think they're confused. There's no moving truck in Fire Red and Leaf Green. You already live there. Then there's several more steps, followed by multiply the number of seconds on your stopwatch by 59.7275 and round down to get your likely advance, subtract 50 from your likely advance, and enter the result into the initial advances field, add 50 from your likely advance. Yeah, you're not doing this. The easiest shiny in Fire Red and Leaf Green is still just a full odds one. Haha! It is I, Grunty Boy, and Mother's Day is in less than a month! This is a coordinated public service announcement to ensure you don't screw it up. Brought to you by our sponsor, Raycon. You know, this is nice. It feels like we've been bickering a lot lately. No, you've been antagonizing me. Don't start the bickering. And instead, let's talk about Raycon's bone conduction headphones. They use off-ear audio to send vibration through your bones, giving you high-quality sound while keeping your ears open to the world around you. Perfect for listening to your music or podcasts while out and about in the world. Premium performance without the premium price tag. They have 13 hours of battery life and are IP68 water and dust proof, so you can use them outside all day. I personally like to use them to listen to audiobooks on walks. And because I know my mom loves walks too, we go on them together whenever we see each other. I know she'd love the bone conduction headphones as well. Over 3 million customers already love Raycon, and they come with a 30-day happiness guarantee. So why wait? Celebrate the moms in your life and go to buyraycon.com/MandJTVBC to get 15% off the bone conduction headphones. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring. Whew, okay, wow. I definitely didn't think we'd get through that without you starting something. Yeah, but it didn't sit right though. You're stinky. No, that's not even true. I'll think of something for next time. Ta-ta! Gen 4 is a very different story. Real quick, I'll touch on Heart Gold Soul Silver. The red Gyarados is back and again a guaranteed shiny. Much better this time too. As in like in battle, like as a Pokemon. More on that in my worst Pokemon everyone uses video. Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum have no guaranteed shinies, but they do have several methods added. If two breeding Pokemon parents are from different languages, their offspring will have an increased shiny chance. This is called the Masuda method, named after Junichi Masuda, and it is present in every mainline game with breeding from this point forward. The odds have changed as time has gone on, and I'll cover that when it happens, but in Gen 4, it was 1 in 1,638. Quite a bit better, but I wouldn't really consider it easy. There's also a glitch featuring the ability Cute Charm that can boost the shiny odds for certain wild Pokemon up to over 21%. But this only works with specific trainer and secret IDs, and as we've seen, there's a lot involved in that. That is not covered in the scope of this video. The true easiest shiny in Gen 4 Sinnoh is one from the Poke Radar. As you build a successful chain of KOing or catching the same Pokemon without encountering other species, fleeing from battle, or a few other things, like a random bad luck that you can't control. That one doesn't feel good. The chance of a shiny patch of grass increases, and if stepped into, the wild Pokemon is guaranteed to be shiny. This chance of a shiny patch maxes at a chain of 40, about 1 in 200. But since there can be up to 4 patches, this is effectively 1 in 50. Additionally, you can manually reactivate the radar to generate new patches without breaking the chain. So once you hit 39, you can activate it over and over again until you see the shiny patch. This method takes quite a bit of skill and some luck, and if you want to try it, I highly recommend watching some in-depth tutorials. But even with the challenge, you can likely guarantee yourself a shiny within a couple hours, as opposed to Masuda method, which could take a horrific amount of time. Next is Gen 5, starting with Black and White. No Poke Radar, but the Masuda method persisted and was actually buffed. The odds are now 1 in 1,365. There are no guaranteed shinies or other methods of increasing the odds, so Masuda method shinies are the easiest in Black and White. Nice and simple. Black 2 and White 2 make everything crazy! First, they introduced the Shiny Charm by adding additional re-rolls of the personality values. Don't worry about the details. Regular encounters are boosted to about 1 in 2,731, while Masuda method babies are boosted to 1 in 1,024. But somehow, when deciding the easiest shiny, this brand new fancy shiny charm doesn't even matter. First, obtaining it required completing the National Pokédex. Not seeing, but owning all Pokemon that existed at the time, excluding mythicals. That was 636 Pokemon, and over 150 of them were wholly unobtainable in Black 2 and White 2. Far, far from easy. But second, and more importantly, across these two games, there are 3 guaranteed shiny Pokemon. In the post-game, after defeating Alder in Flockacy Town, you can go to Black Tower or White Tree Hollow, depending on the game. They function like battle facilities elsewhere, like the Battle Tower or the places in the Battle Frontier, but they have some unique quirks. The trainer levels vary, your levels are uncapped, you gain experience and money as you progress, but you cannot heal from your bag. In general, I consider this to be the easiest of the battle facilities, because even though you can't heal from your bag, that's true everywhere else, and in this one, you can out-level the trainer Pokemon, which you cannot do everywhere else. The final boss of these facilities is Banga, Alder's grandson, with teams at level 80. If you defeat him and return to Flockacy Town, Banga will give you a shiny Gible in Black 2 or a shiny Dratini in White 2. The other guaranteed shiny requires you to see every non-event Pokemon in the Unova Dex, which is so much easier than owning them, especially considering that, like, the genies are not in Black 2 and White 2 locally. Conveniently, there is a book on a route you can look at a picture. If you do so, Professor Juniper gives you the Permit, an item that lets you fly with Skyla to the Nature Preserve, a location with a lot of unique Pokemon. Among them is a wild, shiny Haxorus just hanging out in the overworld. Like the red Gyarados, you can walk up, battle, and catch it. So each game has 2 guaranteed shiny Pokemon, but which is easiest? Well, personally, I think it's the Haxorus. There are 300 Pokemon in the Black 2, White 2 decks, but since you just have to see them, it becomes far easier to complete. Meanwhile, the battle facility requires a team near or at level 80 and some resource management challenges. Plus, to factor in my own personal experience, I got both of them in my original Black 2 save file, but I definitely got the Haxorus first. X and Y brought about a major change. The base full odds of finding a shiny Pokemon were doubled from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 4,096. This also means that the shiny charm odds got better too. So shiny Pokemon became easier to find across the board. However, there were still some methods to make finding them even easier. A lot, actually. The Friend Safari, a post-game area where you can catch wild Pokemon by registering friends to your 3DS, has increased odds of 1 in 819 without the charm, 1 in 585 with it. The Masuda method was buffed to 1 in 682 without the shiny charm, 1 in 512 with it. The shiny charm is again a ton of work though. It again requires completing the National Pokedex. And yeah, there's more Pokemon in X and Y, but there's also just more Pokemon in total. But thankfully, the two easiest methods aren't really affected by it. The Poke Radar returns and functions very similarly to how it did in Gen 4, but the shiny charm appears to have no effect on the odds. Also, it's hard. Or maybe I'm just bad at gaming. Sir Toasty Toes has a great video going into detail about it that I highly recommend you watch if you want to try it yourself. But the end result is that you can get your odds of a guaranteed shiny grass patch up to 1 in 100 at a 40 chain. So with 4 spawning at once, if the grass patch is big enough, that's 1 in 25 odds. I think. This thing's complicated, and there's like phantom patches that like don't spawn a Pokemon, they just kill your chain. There's some, and like some of them disguise themselves as other patches. There's some weird stuff with this. The other is chain fishing. By successfully reeling in Pokemon consecutively, without failing to get a bite or missing the reel in, the shiny odds reach 1 in 100 with only 20 in a row. The shiny charm does impact this, but it only boosts the chance from 1% to 1.04%, so you don't really need it. This method is so straightforward. You can run from the battles and don't have to reel in the same Pokemon. Additionally, by using a combination of a lead Pokemon with suction cups or sticky hold, which boosts the chances of getting a bite, plus some solid objects around the spot your lure lands, you can easily guarantee a bite with every cast. As long as you pay attention and your reflexes aren't terrible, you're good to go. So the Poke Radar has technically better odds, but chain fishing is easier to pull off. So which one wins? To answer this question, I tested both for half an hour each. And I didn't get any shiny Pokemon, but while chain fishing, I reached max odds in under 10 minutes, then saw plenty of Pokemon afterward without issue. Meanwhile, at the half-hour mark of using the Poke Radar, not only had my chain not reached 40, but it ended abruptly at 29 for no reason that I can discern.
What? Why is the music back to normal?
God freaking, what the hell did I do wrong? I guess it has a chance to end randomly, like it does in Gen 4, even if you do everything right. Clearly I am bitter. Chain fishing wins X and Y. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire do not have the Friend Safari nor Poke Radar, but they do have chain fishing and a new method, the Dex Nav. Do not use the Dex Nav. To get odds comparable to chain fishing, you must see that one specific Pokemon species hundreds of times, and the best odds come only at chain encounters of 50 and 100. What? Why? Chain fishing's still easiest, my god! Sun and Moon are next, and there was a big change. The shiny charm no longer requires completing the National Pokedex, just the Alola Pokedex. Yeah! Only 300 Pokemon, all obtainable locally within the game. And it's stayed this way. In all the games since, you only have to complete the regional Pokedex to earn yourself the shiny charm. Well, okay, not all the games. There are some exceptions that we'll get to, if relevant. There are 3 exceptions, but only one of them matters. In fact, that doesn't even matter. I'll talk about it later. The Masuda method is still around, of course. You know what? At this point, I will tell you when it's not. And while most Gen 6 methods are gone, Gen 7 added a new shiny method, SOS encounters. If you weaken a wild Pokemon and use an Adrenaline Orb, you can increase the chance it will call for help. And as more allies appear and are KO'd, the shiny chance increases. After just 31, the odds max out at about 1 in 315 without the shiny charm, 1 in 273 with it. Just be warned though, there's some integer overflow stuff that happens once you hit a chain of, I think, 255. It just like resets your odds. But you could just get 30 more or like run and find another one. You'll be fine. I got quite a few SOS shinies back in my live streaming days. They are easier, generally faster, and definitely less tedious than hatching eggs. So SOS shinies are the easiest shinies in Sun and Moon. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon though, screw SOS battles! We're going to space! The Ultra Warp Ride minigame can find you legendaries or Ultra Beasts, but those have boring normal shiny rates. If you find one of these 20 regular Pokemon though, it is very easy to find one of them shiny. Their shiny odds, unaffected by and thus not requiring the shiny charm, increase the further you fly and the more rings the wormhole has, up to 3. Since the 4-ring ones, the ones with the flower petals, guarantee a legendary appearance unless you've caught all from that color. And these odds are ridiculous. The lowest they get is 1%. But if you go over 5,000 light years and hit a 3-ring wormhole that does not trigger a legend, the shiny chance is 36%. Over 1 in 3. If you don't care about the species, you could get a shiny from this method in an afternoon, if that. Definitely the easiest shinies in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and maybe the easiest shinies overall, excluding guarantees. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are wildly different from the other Gen 7 games though. First, no breeding, so no Masuda method. Weird. Second, the shiny charm is the easiest to get that it's ever been, requiring completing the small Kanto decks. Third, overworld Pokemon that actually appear shiny with little sparkles. In all games where this is the case, shinies are just easier to find even with the same odds as before because you're getting a lot of encounters all at once. Using lures increases the shiny chance significantly. So if you pair that with the shiny charm, all Pokemon have about a 1 in 1,024 chance to be shiny. Now you may have heard about using catch combos to increase the shiny chance. I personally did a lot of that. Like almost every Pokemon in the game. But long after I completed that, it was discovered that the odds boost only applied to the next Pokemon of the chained species to spawn. So from 31 onward, you have to catch a new Pokemon for your catch combo to get just 1 new higher odds shiny to show up. 1 at a time. If you get to 31 and you stop, you're not getting any boosted odds. You're just making that Pokemon show up more often, which maybe that's what you want. But come on! In short, catch comboing is not worth it unless you want that specific species to spawn more or the special spawn to be there. But for the latter, you only need a combo of 11. So the easiest shiny in Let's Go is you using a lure, having a shiny charm, and standing in a place where a bunch of Pokemon spawn, like Viridian Forest. Next is Sword and Shield. You ever see those Pokemon walking around with the yellow aura? Those are called Brilliant Pokemon, and they come with a variety of perks, including a higher chance to be shiny. However, while the shiny odds for Brilliant Pokemon are higher than normal, the Masuda method still exists in this game, which as a reminder has 1 in 683 odds without the shiny charm, 1 in 512 with. So how do Brilliant Pokemon compare to that? Well, they don't. To get the Brilliant Pokemon shiny odds to just match the Masuda method odds, you have to have battled 300 of just 1 species of Pokemon. That's right, Like the Dex Nav, brilliant Pokemon boosts are species specific. So while the odds can get better than the Masuda method, that requires fighting 500 of just one species. It's definitely not easier. Why? It's not even a shiny method. What's the point of it? Masuda method shinies, easiest in Sword and Shield, and coincidentally, this is when I stopped shiny hunting streaming because the only thing you could do was hatch eggs for hours on end. And I personally don't like doing that, so I stopped streaming for that reason, among others. Another reason was, you ever been asked your favorite shiny Pokemon 60 times in an hour by the same person? Not for me. That's just the base game of Sword and Shield, though. In these In Every Game videos that I do, when discussing games with DLC, I try to give you one answer without the DLC, one answer with it. The Crown Tundra portion of the Sword and Shield expansion pass introduced Dynamax Adventures, a side game mode where you can use rental Pokemon to take on several raids in a row, catching the Pokemon you defeat, including legends. When playing through, the Pokemon you catch will never be shiny, but at the end, you can select one of the maximum 4 Pokemon you caught to keep. But when viewing on that screen, they might be shiny, and with a very boosted chance. 1 in 300 without the shiny charm, 1 in 100 with it. And as a reminder, you need only complete the base Galar Dex for the charm. While this may take longer per encounter than the Masuda method, maybe, depending on the type of egg you're hatching, the odds are better, it doesn't require PC or party management, and it's a lot more fun. So Dynamax Adventure Shinies are the easiest in Sword and Shield's DLC. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl feature a new method involving the Grand Underground, but all you need to hear about it is this Bulbapedia quote that I will read to you. This increases the shiny odds for Pokemon in hideaways from 1 in 4096 to 1 in 2048.25 for a period of 4 minutes. Not a great boost? And for only 4 minutes? No thank you. More importantly, the Poke Radar is back. It has some minor alterations from Gen 4, but the shiny odds hit 1 in 99 at a chain of 40, and this is unaffected by the shiny charm, which is nice because they made getting the shiny charm require the national dex again, which in BDSP is every Pokemon from the first 4 generations. Will I ever have a positive thing to say about these games? In the end, like their predecessors, Poke Radar Shinies are the easiest in BDSP. Pokemon Legends Arceus, Arceus, features the first guaranteed shiny in many years. A man in Jubilife Village shares with you a rumor about a strange Ponyta out in the Horseshoe Plains. When you arrive, you'll find a guaranteed wild shiny Ponyta. Even if it runs off, you can go back to the village, return to the plains, and find it again. This is another one of those shiny charm exceptions. You gotta like hit research level 10 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, there's a guaranteed shiny. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are next, and like Sword and Shield, I'll give you the base game answer first. It involves combining 2 methods. The first is sandwiches. By combining the right ingredients, including Herba Mystica, you can activate Sparkling Power, which boosts the shiny odds across the board for a specific type for half an hour. By combining this with Encounter Power, you can make a bunch of Pokemon with boosted shiny odds appear all at once. But then there's also Mass Outbreaks. Each day, a few will be scattered around the map, spawning many more of a particular Pokemon. They don't offer better odds, though. Unless you slaughter them. I know that sounds like a joke, I am serious. If you KO at least 60 of them, but not too many, you go too far, it's like an extinction event, the odds increase quite a bit. So if you go to an outbreak, KO 60 Pokemon with auto battles, then make a sparkling level 3 sandwich matching that Pokemon's type, you can match the Masuda method odds, but with a ton of Pokemon on screen all at once that you can clear out with a brief picnic. Sparkling Power Mass Outbreak Shinies are definitely the easiest in Scarlet and Violet. But then things get tricky with the DLC, because they introduce 2 guaranteed shiny Pokemon that are super hard to get. The first is in the Teal Mask. If you beat the easy, then normal, then hard Ogre Oustin minigame, you're rewarded with a guaranteed shiny Munchlax with the crafty mark. However, apparently, the hard difficulty of Ogre Oustin is not technically, but virtually impossible alone. You must team up with others. And even then, you need to have a coordinated strategy, and even then you may not succeed. I've never attempted it myself, so I am passing along the described difficulty from a video by Austin John Plays, along with the comment section on that video. The second guaranteed shiny is in the Indigo Disc. Once you've completed its story, you can invite characters to the clubhouse, talk with them, kick them out, invite them back in and talk with them again. You can battle them. You don't have to. And once you've invited that person for a third time, they'll trade with you. And then once you've done that 10 times, you can use the PC to summon the secret boss of Blueberry Academy, Serrano. This is silly. Why do they call him the secret boss? This man introduces himself as the headmaster at the start of this DLC. So like, we know who you are, man. Like, what is this secret boss stuff? He doesn't even walk out wearing a wig like Clive. This is a very public, like this guy has a LinkedIn, I'm sure. If you defeat Serrano and his high level 80s competitive team in a double battle, he will trade you a shiny Blitzel. So there's 2 guaranteed shiny Pokemon now, but I'm not sure they're easier than the Mass Outbreak Sandwich shinies. In fact, I know one of them isn't. Munchlax, you're out of here. If it's impossible alone, that's disqualifying. I struggle more to pick between the Blitzel and the Outbreak Sandwich shinies. Those are just chance, but accessible way earlier. Blitzel is a guarantee, but requires beating the story of both the main game and the DLC, and mashing through hours of dialogue, then winning a tough battle. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually think the Outbreak Sandwich shinies are still easier than the guaranteed ones. Like, if you set it up right, I feel it. I'm quite confident you could get a shiny faster than you could get that Blitzel. And the final game for this video, Legend ZA has a guaranteed shiny. Once you've battled Lita in main mission 8, which is quite early in the game, you can complete side mission 17, a shiny Mareep. It is super easy. Just go up on top of the building in Wild Zone 1, and you find it just sitting there. And it's only level 11, so you could play through the whole game with it. In fact, I'm sure many of you did. The Mega Dimension DLC Donuts can boost shiny odds too, and in fact, if you get one with Sparkling Power 3, going into a distortion guarantees a shiny for that type. But this is post-game, way after the shiny Mareep, so it remains the easiest shiny, regardless of if you have the DLC or not. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of video, check out the first Pokemon you should catch in every game. The best Pokemon to throw on your team that you can obtain before getting your first badge.